Okay, are we going to talk about this movie?
No.
We are going to talk about this movie. Emma.
Emma.
Whenever you're ready.
Whenever I'm ready. Emma, whenever
you
I'm
are
ready,
ready,
I can go. Quiet on set.
No rush, though.
Quiet on set. Noah, you're not good at this.
And
what's up, fuckers?
I don't have a flapper.
I can't believe you did Emma's thing.
What's up, fuckers? Welcome to Casual Obsession, the horror movie podcast where we talk about horror movies and other topics sometimes when we get off on tangents. Today, we are talking about a Korean horror film called The Wailing, which was released in 2016. I am your host for this week, Emma, and with me today are other people.
Is that a whale noise?
That's the wailing.
That's the wailing right there.
Yeah. That's me, Noah. In case you don't
speak whale.
I am unironically furious with myself for pulling in a Finding Nemo joke in the year of our Lord 2021.
Yeah, that feels extra lame even for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Honestly, if it wasn't directly connected to Dory, I don't think it would have been as bad. If I had snuck in like a casual P. Sherman 42.
That's also connected to Dory.
Yeah, but
there's
the Dory jokes, and then there's the jokes that Dory might be connected to, but it's not like the Dory thing as much.
And I'm Nina, and I never knew my father.
What?
That's my Nemo reference for the week.
Okay. Jeff, what's your Nemo reference?
Horror movies are friends, not food.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the best one.
Yeah, nice one.
I think it is. I think that might be even worse than the whale thing, actually. I just had no time to think about it. Anyways, I'm Jeff, the other host.
Yeah. So we have all four of us back under one roof again. Feels nice.
Woo!
After we had a little bit of a break because
the same place.
Noah had the COVID. But now...
And I no longer do.
Now he's alive.
And I managed to escape with my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Nina didn't catch it at all, which is a huge achievement.
Hell yeah.
Honestly.
Pretty cool.
So let me go ahead and give a summary of The Wailing.
I would love to hear a summary of The Wailing.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you for loving to hear a summary of The Wailing. So, as I said, The Wailing is a Korean horror film that was released in 2016. That was directed by Na Hong Jin. And in it, there is a kind of local policeman in this small Korean village where these murders start taking place under very bizarre, kind of weird circumstances of these people going into these crazy states that almost kind of like look like zombies. And they kill their families, and then they're either arrested or sometimes they kill themselves. And it is this police officer trying to figure out what's going on as his daughter begins getting sick, and everybody seems to think that this Japanese man is to blame. And that's about as good of a summary as I'm going to give you without spoilers. But yeah. Noah, how was this critically received?
Honestly, I'm looking at some of these ratings and I'm dead shocked.
Really?
Right? Because IMDb only gave this a 7.5. And I think that is incorrect, if we're being totally honest. I do not think that this is a 7.5 at all. Rotten Tomatoes, on the other hand, gives it a nice 99.
Nice.
Which is
out of 100?
A lot better.
Yeah.
Out of 100. I forgot to look it up on Letterboxd.
Wow.
So bear with me while I vamp and talk about the 81% Metacritic rating.
Love it.
And then on Letterboxd, we ring
Oh, we
in with
can't hear you, Noah.
3.9 out of 5. So slightly below 80.
So interesting critical ratings. I'm interested to hear what you guys thought.
Why? I would love to tell you.
Please tell me.
But I'm going to make Jeff do it first.
No,
Why am I
Because I
going
think Jeff is the only one who I don't know about.
I
Jeff.
literally never go first.
Jeff is the only one we
I know.
don't know about, like how they felt about the movie. So I'm curious to
So
hear
let's leave him
his
for last as a surprise.
It's a
We gotta
moose.
keep
Fine,
the
we'll have his
suspense.
last. Nina, would you like to go before me, or should I go first?
You do you, man.
We've got to
I
just
give this
establish
movie-
an order for this at some point.
Nope.
No,
'Cause
Noah's
the
going
host-
now.
The host almost never goes first, you know? And Emma's the host, so she can't go first, and you have to go last, which means it's me or Nina. And me or Nina are deciding that me are going, and me rating 9
Only a 9?
out of 10. Yeah, I love this movie a lot. The length did get to me a little bit, and it is very hard to take notes while reading subtitles. And I
Yes.
only learned the name of one character because I
Well,
had a
that
really
sounds
hard
like a
time.
you
That
problem.
sounds like a you
that's
problem.
what I was
you
saying.
colonialist.
That's what I was saying. I was literally about to say I was having a really
That's
hard
fair.
time taking notes and keeping track of names when the names are only things that I see in subtitles. Subtitle only movies are very difficult for me to follow. They're almost always worth the watch, like this one is,
Right.
but it is an ordeal to watch, which is why I give it a 9 out of 10 versus a perfect 10. If I spoke Korean, this would be a 10 out of 10 experience for me.
Wow. So you're rating yourself a 1 out of 10, and that's reflecting on
And
the
that's
rating of the movie.
subtracting it from the rating of the movie.
Everyone,
I
Noah
don't know
gave
what
this
you want
movie
from
a
me.
10 out of 10.
This was a great movie, but
Let-
I just
let the
suck,
record
so I
show.
guess it wasn't a good experience.
I'm sorry that
This
I'm sorry
reminds
that it
me-
was hard for me to
I have a lot
experience
of
the movie.
I have a lot of Korean named characters in the novel that I wrote, and I'm about to put your mom on blast.
Oh, no.
She told me it was hard to keep track of the characters with fantasy names, and the characters she listed were all characters with Korean names.
Ooh, oh no! I can't believe my mom doesn't
Damn.
know Korea's a real place.
Wait till she
Oh,
finds out there's
no.
2.
Oh no!
Can
Anyway,
I just say real quick?
Apparently, this runs in
sorry.
the family.
Real quick, can I just say I physically cringe when I'm hanging out with people and one of them is like from Korea and
Wow.
they'll talk about,
I can't believe
like-
you hate Koreans like that.
no, they're like from Korea or lived in Korea and they'll talk about like, oh yeah, I grew up in Korea. And some like white
Oh.
guy will be like, oh, North or South? It's like,
The one that you're allowed to leave.
yeah,
dumbass.
like,
Come on,
dude.
Why would you ask that? That has the same vibes as people who, before Puerto Rico was like, I feel like when I was a kid, you could say Puerto Rico and people wouldn't know where that was.
Oh.
Because 90% of the time I'd be like, oh, I'm Puerto Rican. And they'd say Costa Rica. I'm like, no.
Shit, at least
No.
I knew Puerto Rico was a place. I just couldn't place it on a map.
It's the problem with growing up on the West Coast, I think, because Puerto Rico and Costa Rica, like there's not like a majority in Washington state that's like from one or the other, unlike on the East Coast where it's like a lot of Puerto Ricans on the East Coast.
We got a lot of
We
Puerto
do
Ricans
have a
over
lot
here.
of Puerto Ricans over here.
yeah.
There's maybe even one in the call.
What?
Puerto Ricans are coming from inside the house.
Oh my god.
Is this Puerto Rican in this room with you right now?
Did you know that Puerto Rico means rich port?
I did know that.
Oh wow. How about that?
Wow, okay, Nina, if you're so smart, then what do you rate the movie?
So I like my rating is similar to Noah's.
Except it's one less because
It
she's
is.
making fun of me, but
I
also
have-
a hypocrite.
I have serious ADHD. So we had to take breaks through this movie and it was fully my fault. Noah called me out twice for tuning out and we paused at that time and I appreciate him for that. No long movies aren't really gonna get hugely 100 ratings from me because I just can't.
Except for
I had the
this
same problems with some of the
one.
mob movies. This one gets an 8 out of 10 for me, I think.
Oh
I
my
can't
really
believe
enjoyed it.
I can't believe I was right.
Oh my
I really
God.
enjoyed it, but I don't think I enjoyed it more than anything else we've watched so far necessarily.
I
Yeah.
hate all of
That's
you.
fair.
I really liked a
I
couple of the other
enjoyed
ones
it.
we watched.
I enjoyed it more than a selection of things that we've watched.
Oh, more than but not. It's not my favorite of all the movies we've watched so far. Is what
Oh, I mean that's fair, but I still think I would watch this again before I would watch The Endless, and I really
I would watch
liked
The Endless again first, but that's because it appeals to my specific taste in horror. So I wouldn't
I'm
expect
just
anyone
gonna
to
pit
agree
Emma's
with me.
picks against each other. Noted Emma pick Halloween. I would watch this before that.
And you rate both of them 9 stars. So curious.
So curious.
But yeah, no, I'm an 8 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed this movie, but I can barely sit through a 2.5 hour movie when it's my first viewing. I don't think I could watch it a second time.
So that sounds more like a you problem. So let the record show
It is.
Nina rated it a 10 out of 10 if she didn't have ADHD.
There we go.
If I didn't have ADHD, if I you could heal my mental disorders, this would be a 10 out
Me,
of 10.
if I spoke Korean, this would be 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Nina, if you could fix my brain, this would be 10 out of 10.
Well, luckily I have no mental problems
None
and
whatsoever.
speak fluent Korean.
Damn. I can't believe Emma's rating this a 13.
So I give this a 10 out of 10. I think I gave the X-Men movie a 10 out of 10. Slight
a
as a
very
joke.
earned 10 out of
Slight
10.
as a joke, but also I enjoyed that movie. But this movie is like,
It was a fun
I would
movie.
consider this a legitimate 10 out of 10. I just thought this was a really incredible movie.
All right.
But Jeff, on the
Jeff
other hand,
gives it
Me,
a
on the
3
other
out of
hand.
10. He fucking hates it.
and he can speak Korean and doesn't have ADHD.
So-
0 out of 10, even worse than Spring.
I still can't believe I rated Spring the highest out of almost everyone.
I rated
and I
it
was
high.
neutral on it.
I gave it like a
Yeah,
It
Emma
was- it
rated
was
it
you
high.
and me,
or
Emma.
9.
All right.
It was just us.
I want to give this movie
A 10 out of 10.
tentative. Okay, so like based on the title, I thought at first, oh, is it just about like, you know, like an adaptation of Moby Dick or something more or less? But then I looked at the way it was spelled and I realized it was wrong. I've spelled it wrong on my notes, of course. But
I thought
once
that
I
was
saw the way it was
intentional.
spelled, I was like, oh, I see. This is like a 2.5 hour long documentary about Bob Marley's band, the Wailers. And then I watched
yes,
it
yes.
and I was so confused.
Bob Marley doesn't even show up till almost the end. It was very, very
He's in it
frustrating.
very briefly. I thought that was kind of odd. I mean, he is dead, so it's probably hard to get him for a film role like this. But
One would think that would make him more available.
oh, right, what else is he doing? But
Anyway,
there were
Poor Emma's dying inside, waiting for Jeff to say just a number.
I'm waiting for him to say 10 out of 10. I see it in his
Let's hear it,
goatee.
Jeff.
There-
Keep going.
There were a lot of moments where I was really grateful to have the subtitles because I don't know what was going on. Everyone was talking with like this really thick accent that I'm not used to. I just could not listen through it. I had to be reading. It was like when I watched Train
Was-
Spotting. You know, you ever watch that movie? They're all just so Scottish.
What's the
But,
accent the Korean language?
wow, this really is a Dietz family affliction. I can't believe I'm married into this.
It's your fault.
The Japanese parts I was okay with because of all the anime that I watched, of course. But
Fucking weeb.
there were a lot of points
Weeb.
in the movie where I had to like back it up to see if I missed something, and I feel upon having finished it, I feel like I missed something big. So I'm gonna give it like a tentative
10 out of 10.
7.5 because I really, really did enjoy it throughout. And I felt that it was doing really cool things throughout. But then when the ending happened, I was just like, I kind of don't understand. I feel like something happened that I missed at some point.
No.
With
This
that
is a
said,
movie I think that
What's
You've
up?
Okay.
got to dig in. You got to
Oh,
sink
I
your
was just
teeth
gonna
in
say,
to really get what
this
it
is a
means.
movie that I think benefits from a read on a wiki.
Okay.
I don't think it's like necessary, but it definitely, I feel like I understood the entire plot based on like having watched it and having briefly read the wiki plot synopsis.
Oh, okay.
So I think that
zooted at the time by accident, so that
God
you gotta
damn it, Jeff.
stop.
factored
Everyone-
some things a little bit.
Jeff would have given this movie 10 out of 10 if he wasn't zooted. And
But instead, he gives it a 4 out of 20.
I really don't feel like that's the reason that I was missing things, but
really, you weren't missing things. There are a lot of cultural subtext things
okay.
and
Mhm.
interpretations and like metaphor. This movie does not explain what happens very clearly on purpose.
Uh-huh.
But there are a lot of really great video essays that try to figure it out, and it's really, really interesting, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Okay. I was kind of wondering about how much the cultural difference would play into that. I kind of wonder if it's like kind of like I mean, like Noah was saying, if he spoke Korean, then like, you know, the experience of watching it would have been different and he might have gotten more out of it. I feel like that's a big thing, not even necessarily speaking the language, but just understanding like cultural references
The culture.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into all that, because I want to just yell things at you guys,
Sure. I'm so excited.
Hell yeah.
we'll get to
I'm ready to
trigger
get yelled at.
warnings. We'll get to trigger warnings.
Let's do it.
Let's do trigger warnings.
Yeah. So trigger warnings. We talked about this at the end of last episode. So if you didn't watch that episode, shame on you. But
But we're still here to help because we still love you despite your
I
flaws.
don't love you.
But we are disappointed.
No.
But I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
Oh God.
So trigger warnings. There's some demon possession stuff.
There do be demon possession.
There's some animal death, including a dog. There's some racism. And I said that in a weird way because Koreans do not like the Japanese for good reason, because obviously Japan had like Korean concentration camps basically during World War II.
The whole imperialism thing doesn't really put them in a good light.
Yes. So, it's hard to directly call it like, oh yeah, this is like racism towards Japanese people, like from a Korean cultural standpoint, because none of us are Korean. But there's one Japanese character in this movie, and the entirety of the Korean village is like, oh, it's his fault that all of this is happening. So I feel like maybe like a little bit plays into that, but it's hard to say from our viewpoint specifically.
Yeah. As Americans, it's really rough because America during World War II did similarly terrible things to the Japanese American population.
Mm-hmm.
And the slur that the subtitles decide to use, I'm not sure if it's a direct translation, I would say it's not, is one that was used by Americans during the World War II era towards Japanese people. And I think that's an interesting localization. I'm sure it's probably the most accurate way to convey the like mentality, but it was still really weird to see that particular slur in the subtitles so
it
casually.
felt weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to comment on as an American, and I'm sure that American Japanese people would feel differently than I think Japanese, like people from Japan,
Yeah.
would probably feel.
Yeah. So it's hard to say, but there's also mention of a rape happening. There are these kind of segments where they talk about like, oh, I heard the Japanese man did this, and then it'll kind of like show a scene of the Japanese man doing that, kind of. And there was a time where somebody said, like, I heard the Japanese raped a girl. And it shows him, like, fishing, and the girl's kind of, like, hanging out behind him. And then he turns around and she falls back, and then he moves towards her and the scene cuts. But it doesn't show anything, but, like, want to throw that out as a warning, because if you don't know what's going to happen, that can trigger some feelings.
Take you off guard a bit.
Yeah. I think that's it for me. Little kids being in pain, I guess, if that's a problem with you.
Speaking of, the actress who played, I don't remember her name, Hyojin, did such a good job.
Yes.
She was so good.
It was
in
really
this
hard to
role.
watch because her non affected persona reminded me a lot of my little sister. So that transformation was very hard to watch.
Yeah. So those are all the triggers, and let's go on and head over to Emma's scary rating. I think that sounds like a good idea.
I think it does too. Hey, Emma.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
What's up, Noah?
Emma, how scary, hypothetically on a scale of perhaps 1 to 10, how scary was this movie?
Great question. There are some very viscerally interesting scenes, and slightly uncomfortable scenes that help set the tone of strangeness in this movie. And while I don't think there were any times where I like straight up like jump scare, like jumped or anything, the tone that this movie sets is very creepy, and the last like 30 minutes of the movie are incredibly tense of just not knowing what's going on, what's happening, who's telling the truth, who's lying, like that sort of thing. And that plays into a lot of very significant emotions that you will feel during this movie. And so in that sense, I would say it's scary, but it's not scary in a way that like you'll jump. It's just kind of like scary to your core a bit.
Yeah.
So I give it a 10 out of 10 scary.
How about that?
There we go.
Yeah.
Good rating.
What a surprise 10 out of 10 scary rating from Emma. Thank you, Emma.
I wasn't expecting it.
I never expect Emma to give a movie 10 out of 10 scaries.
Never.
Never. But with that out of the way, we can head over to our spoil zone. And
The spoil zone.
the spoil
Ooh.
zone. And I can give a summary of this movie. So, a Japanese man arrives in the small village of Gakseong in the mountains of South Korea, and this weird infection starts taking place. People start killing like their families and kind of like zombie out, as I had described. The movie follows a police officer named Jong-gu, who he's got like his own little family, and he starts investigating what's going on, and everybody's talking about like, oh, it's this Japanese guy. And he doesn't really believe it, but at the second incident, he starts seeing that the Japanese guy is hanging around the crime scene, kind of like taking pictures as the police are getting everything contained. And he finds that odd. As he's hanging around at the crime scene the next day, just kind of like guarding it, there's this mysterious woman in white who's throwing rocks at him, and she basically tells him that, hey, it's this Japanese guy. You need to take this seriously. And so he's like, okay, and he starts having these really intense nightmares. One of which happens right after meeting this woman in white, where he's at the crime scene and the Japanese man attacks him and is going to eat him or something, and then he wakes up. After this, his daughter starts feeling sick, but he's obviously still investigating things. He gets a local priest's help, who's the cousin, I think, of one of his fellow officers. And
I believe nephew, maybe?
Cousin, nephew, something, who speaks a little Japanese, to go with them to meet the Japanese man. Japanese man has a creepy kind of cottage off in the forest, has a dog.
Goals, honestly.
Goals, truly. And Japanese man is very serious and kind of intense, and very, like, imposing with his presence, and isn't really giving the police many answers, and they kind of, like, start threatening him. Jong-goo's daughter, Hyojin, her health worsens as she's getting really, really sick, and they feel like a wicked spirit has kind of possessed her. And so they call this local shaman to come and try to help her. And he comes, checks things out, does a few, like, ritualistic things to try to cleanse the spirit from her. It doesn't work. At the same time, we see the Japanese man doing this kind of ritual. And yeah, it's this big confusing thing. It's hard to describe this movie. So then daughter keeps getting worse. A police officer goes to confront the Japanese man again, brings a posse with him, and Japanese man, fucking hell. So Japanese man
he, like, had a zombie.
He raised a zombie with his ritual, and when the posse comes, they find the zombie. The zombie starts kind of fucking them up, and then they see the Japanese man watching from the bushes. I keep saying Japanese man, by the way, because he's never actually given a name. So
I checked IMDb to see if they, like, named him there, but he's just the Japanese man.
Yep.
Huh.
And so he's watching them from the bushes. They see him. They start chasing him. He climbs down a cliff and hides. And then they start driving away. And as they're driving away, his body falls from the cliffside, hitting their car, and he's dead. They go back home. Jong-goo's daughter is still feeling really sick, and the woman in white kind of approaches Jong-goo and tells him not to go home, basically. And he's like, why? And she's like, if you go home, your family will die. And he's very conflicted. But then he gets a call from the shaman who had helped him, who he's been experiencing some weird, crazy crap as well. And he tried to run away from the town, but then his car was hit by a swarm of locusts. And he ended up turning around because of it. And he calls Jong-goo and says that he had misunderstood the situation in the village, that the Japanese man was just another shaman that was trying to protect the village, and that he wasn't bad, and that it was this woman in white who was the evil spirit trying to kill his daughter. And so then Jong-goo's there with the woman in white who's telling him not to go home. She says he needs to wait for the rooster to crow 3 times before he goes. He confronts her, tries to figure out what's going on, isn't getting a clear answer. And after the second crowing of the rooster, he goes home. And while there, he finds that his daughter killed his wife and his mother-in-law, and then he ends up, he's not dead, but he gets very seriously injured. And then while all this is happening, the priest, nephew cousin, goes to the Japanese man's place and finds this small cave nearby, goes in there and finds the Japanese man still alive in this cave, kind of like near a fire. And he starts confronting the Japanese man, asking like, what are you? Who are you? Basically confronts him, saying that he's the devil. And the Japanese man reveals that, yeah, he is the devil, and then steals the soul of the priest and probably kills him. And then the movie ends with the sun rising. The shaman goes into Jong-Goo's house, and Jong-Goo is still alive but is very injured, kind of next to the bodies of his family, and the shaman leans down and kind of takes a picture, which kind of shows that he has ties with the Japanese man, because the Japanese man is always taking pictures. And then he goes back with this box of with the pictures of Jong-Goo and his family, and puts it in a box with pictures of all the other victims, and puts it in his car, and he drives away. And that's the movie. It's hard to summarize. There's a lot of small details in there that I did not include because I would be talking for a very long time about all the ins and outs of this movie, which I am probably going to do anyway. So you'll just get it here. But I'm curious, because I've been talking for a little bit. I want to hear your guys' thoughts about just the flow of the movie, how it all played out, things that you thought were interesting, and then I can maybe hit you up with some of the theories on what everything in this movie means.
I'm very excited to hear those. I want to talk about the shaman a little bit.
Yes.
The shaman and the ghosts, because I mean, we open up this movie with a Bible verse.
Yep.
Which you pair that with the crow 3 times thing, you got a lot of Bible parallels going on in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is kind of interesting.
Yes.
Wait,
so,
considering
Hold on.
yeah.
A Bible
Yeah.
verse. Is
The
that the
movie-
text that came up in
Yes.
the beginning? Okay,
Yes.
the subtitles
Yeah.
were messing up for me at the beginning for whatever reason.
me too.
So
Yeah,
I
because
have
it was
no
trying
idea
to
what
it was
any of
trying to
that
do
said.
things like atmospheric noise, and it was also trying to tell you what the Bible verse said, and it was running very fast, but it was a Bible
Yes.
verse.
The
Okay.
Bible verse is...
Same one that they quote later.
Yeah, the Bible verse is Jesus, after he died and came back, talking to Doubting Thomas, classic Doubting Thomas,
It's classic Tom.
Classic Doubting Thomas.
showing him the scars and basically saying, like, I'm not a spirit, I'm not a ghost, I'm, like, actually here. Like, touch my skin, see that, like, I have flesh and blood, and that sort of deal.
Right, okay, which is all the same stuff that the Japanese guy says to the priest at the end when he's like showing him the fake scars on his hands and shit. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, also,
So that- Ooh.
I was gonna say this too. Sorry, but this movie is very interesting because in Korea, Christianity has been spreading like pretty significantly, and it's been getting really popular. And this movie kind of does an interesting thing of showing like Christianity and like local spiritualism and Buddhism and stuff as well. So it's this weird, like, interesting mix between kind of everything. But yes, Noah, sorry.
And I liked that a lot. But like the biblical tie-ins I was mentioning, not really a great point to what I was going to say. I just wanted to bring those up in the sense of the way it seemed to impact the story, though, was we had the priest who showed up, and he literally was only brought in because he spoke some Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
There was no point that they were thinking, you know what, we need to have him here to help with our demon problem. It was immediately, we're going to the shaman. We need to talk to the shaman about this.
Yeah.
I've heard very good things about this shaman, and we need to talk to him. And, you know, that really, really neat. But then we get to the shaman. And from the get-go, I was not convinced that the Japanese man was actually the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It took an embarrassingly long time into the movie for me to admit that the Japanese man was actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
And by an embarrassingly long time, I mean it was the last 10 minutes
No,
of
I'm
this
absolutely.
2.5 hour movie.
I don't think that's embarrassing at all. I think.
I think that's
Thank
by
goodness.
design,
Yes.
honestly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's intended
Because-
to look like it's a misdirect and then catch you off guard, right?
Mhm. Because I love when he went and he bought his black roosters for his whatever ritual he was interrupted in the middle of that raised a zombie.
My
Mhm.
dumbass thought those were
'Cause I feel like-
crows.
Nope, definitely roosters.
He's got a lot of crows hanging around with him in other scenes, though. Are you sure?
Yeah, because he bought these ones from the market.
Yeah,
that's
you
what
watch
that
him
scene
do
was.
it.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he went and he bought his roosters. Because I really don't feel like he intended to raise a zombie, or at least not a mindless fighting zombie. I feel like maybe if he had meant to raise the corpse as like a servant, but since he was interrupted. But, you know, like with everything happening, with the fact that the shaman they brought in was doing his death hex, and then that really did seem to be affecting him. When we were told later, oh, the shaman is actually in league with the Japanese man who is a demon. I was like, well, that doesn't make much sense because he almost killed him, unless he got to him later. But, you know, now I'm just confused.
I can talk about that later.
And
I'm so
I'm
excited to
excited.
hear about it.
but I don't know. I loved the fact that it kept you guessing the whole time. Like, yeah, the Japanese man had his like little prayer room full of very incriminating evidence. He had his secret picture room full of very incriminating evidence. But as soon as it was made clear that he was a spiritual guy, I'm like, oh, he's aware of the problems in town and knows that there's an outside force and
Yeah.
he's trying to fight it. And I really thought it was going to be one of those like underdog stories of people hate this man, one cool trick, type of situations where like no one liked him, but he was still trying to save the town.
Yeah.
Which I think is a more Western storyline to tell anyway. If this was an American movie, I really feel like that's kind of the direction it would have gone.
Mhm.
But I am very happy that it played out this way. But you know, I don't know. It was an awful lot of fun.
Yeah. So for the listeners, the last time I hosted an episode, which was about 2 months ago, it was Graham's birthday. Graham, our guest star for our episode about The Endless. It was his birthday like the day before we recorded, and he always talks about how he really loves watching horror movies, but he wants to watch them with people, and he doesn't really have any friends in real life that will watch horror movies with him. And so after we recorded, I was like, hey, Graham, let's watch a horror movie together. And he was like, heck yeah. And so I had heard good things about this movie. I was like, I was kind of wanting to check it out and maybe have this be my next movie for the podcast if it turned out to be decent. And so we watched it together and we both loved it. And we both were super conflicted and did not know who was the good guy, who was the bad guy until like you said, Noah, the last 10 minutes. Because, and reading into it more, there's a lot of symbolism and imagery that from a Western perspective, you'd be like, okay, like that's clearly the evil person. But is not necessarily the case with like cultural religions within Korea. is the way I'll put it, because I don't want to necessarily attribute it to like Buddhism or something else and be wrong and an insensitive white person. But I was reading, like, when the shaman, when he's visiting the house, he notes a jar of soy sauce and breaks it open, and inside there's a dead crow. And so to Western audiences, we're like, okay, like, that's a bad thing. But one of the theories or something that I was reading is actually like, traditionally, like, spirits of the wilderness come in the form of birds of prey, and like, that's the ways in which their protections and stuff are depicted. And so an interpretation could be that that was like the woman in white kind of protecting like their home.
I like that.
Yeah. And so just with all of that and not necessarily understanding like all of the cultural symbolism and everything, it's very much a thing of like, I don't like Japanese man, even though he's got a creepy ritual room, and he's got these pictures and things of all of these people, he could have those things to try to protect them. And in the same way, the woman in white, you see her throughout the movie wearing the things of the victims. Like, she has like the coat of this woman who is at the bar that becomes possessed. She has the hairpin of the daughter. And she has all these other things that you see her with throughout the movie that you also saw the victims with. And it's because, like, you need things of the people in order to protect them, is basically what it comes down to. So
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just this whole thing of, like, it could be anybody. Like, they could be telling the truth. Who fucking knows? But it's real great.
I like that a lot. Did any of you get the vibe that as soon as the shaman showed up, did y'all get the vibe that he was a scam, like, right away?
No,
No?
I did not.
Okay, maybe that. As soon as he hit the screen, I was like, I don't want to assume that he's here to rip them off, but I also have big vibes that he is here to rip them off.
Okay, so here's what I think. I was thinking a lot during the movie that I haven't watched like a whole ton of K-horror. What I have watched is Train to Busan, and Parasite, which kind of counts. Train to Busan is a zombie movie, so it's not even comparable. I've watched some J-horror, which is different, but also is also not Western, so there's some different like plot points that are typical in foreign movies that are not typical to Western audiences. So you kind of start to recognize the differences between the two genres. And what was really interesting to me was that this movie did follow a lot of kind of Western demon possession plot points in some spots, specifically kind of having the shaman come in is very similar to like in Poltergeist and in Insidious when we had the people come in to kind of read the situation. And that's not to say that like that is like copying Western. It's just a trope that I recognized. Mm-hmm. And that put me on edge because like in American Horror Story, there's a like medium that comes in and kind of reads the situation, and you're kind of trained through these Western story tropes to be on alert for these shamans or mediums to be frauds, because that's something that happens a lot in Western media. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of why I was on edge about him, was I was like, oh, yeah. Especially because he wore like the suit and he was very much there for the money. It felt like the same kind of flashy used car salesman like aesthetic that you can kind of get with Western mediums coming into demon possession movies. But that's something that I noticed anyway.
Yeah, I felt very similarly because I was like, why is a shaman wearing like this very nice suit, and
It was a nice
then
suit.
he was asking for a lot of money to do things. And I was like suspicious of him, but then like he went to their house and found that crow and the soy sauce and all this other stuff, and I was like, okay, maybe I was wrong and maybe he's like legitimate. And then he did that ceremony to try to save Hyojin, and
Mhm.
I was like, okay, and at the same time it was seemingly hurting the Japanese man.
Mm-hmm.
And because the two scenes are interspersed of the Japanese man doing a ritual which you're led to believe is him trying to protect himself from the shaman's ritual. And then it's the shaman doing all of this crazy stuff, and it's like showing the Japanese man feeling like very hurt and all of this other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that kind of gave him credibility in my eyes, which I think led to me really having me being conflicted about like who to trust in the end.
Yeah.
I think it worked really well.
I agree. I think it really did. I knocked something over. Sorry.
You're fine.
I think it really did contribute to the mystery elements of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that. I liked the scene a lot, the intercutting of the two different rituals that were happening at the same time.
In reflection, I now change my opinion to he clearly was exhausted from his own rituals since the other shaman was working with him the whole time, obviously not death hexing him.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm starting to think, well, obviously raising the dead is going to be a bit of an ordeal, so he probably was just exhausted from doing his own thing.
That's part of it.
Could be, yeah.
Do you want to know the other part?
I do want to know the other part.
Always. I'm very interested.
Okay. There are a lot of theories. And I will share the
can't wait to
theory
hear
that
them.
I think holds the most credibility. So in the movie, especially in the end, you find out Japanese man is the devil.
Yeah.
Which also, that ending scene with his transformation and just kind of the lighting and everything and the way it played out. Mwah,
I love that
chef's
scene.
kiss. So good.
Very good.
So good.
Very good scene.
But
The makeup also, when they got to that stuff, very, 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 very.
Actually,
really,
the makeup
really
and
good.
the visual effects, set dressing, etc. throughout is really, really good. It's so gross looking.
Honestly.
Mhm.
Like every murder scene
everything
that
is
they have,
real.
everything is just so.
Every
like, if it
time
was just blood
the
everywhere, that would
rash
be one
TM
thing.
shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like if
Oh,
there are
that's
murder scenes
my
and stuff where just
first
blood
note.
everywhere, that would be one thing. But they've just got like all kinds of, I don't even know what it is, just shit everywhere. It's incredible. It looks
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you find out Japanese man is the devil or is possessed by the devil or a demon.
Is
At
a
the
demon
end.
or something.
Yes. But throughout the movie, you see him be vulnerable in a lot of ways as well. And the prevailing theory, and the theory that I think fits the best, is the Japanese man is possessed by a demon or the devil, and he's regularly trying to fight it off. And so he has these moments of lucidity where he's in control, and then these other moments where the devil's in control.
I like that.
And the ritual he was doing was to cast the demon into that dead body, which he was able to successfully do. But then you get the scene where the zombie is attacking the villagers who came as a posse to like kill the Japanese man. And the Japanese man sees them and they chase him through the forest. And he climbs down a cliff to escape them. And this entire scene, he's very, very scared, very like emotional, trying to get away. In a way you haven't seen him like the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
But then
It definitely is the most emotion he shows.
yes. But then he falls off the cliff or something as they're leaving and gets hit by the car and dies. And after his death, the people stop and they throw him off the other side of the road, which is down a further cliff. And because he's dead, the devil comes back and fully possesses his body and takes control.
Okay.
Okay. I like that.
I definitely can see
Yes.
that.
It makes sense.
And then
Speaking of the zombie, by the way, one of the most wicked zombie fights I think I've seen ever.
It's a good one.
mhm.
It was
Yeah.
that one.
Like when they got that solid hit to the back of his head, I'm like, there we go. And then it got back up and kept going. Oh, it was just nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting normal zombie rules, and it was
It
not.
was not normal zombie rules because it was demon zombie.
Which is
But
worse.
after-
But yes, please keep going.
After the ritual that the Japanese man performs to cast the demon out of himself, you see the woman in white kind of watching him. And the idea is that she was there to like protect him during the ceremony.
Uh-huh.
And then after he dies, you see her kind of watching from the cliff, seeing his death. There's some interpretations where they view the woman in white as the evil spirit in this movie, which are really interesting
Personally,
theories.
That's interesting, but I personally don't agree.
There's some really convincing evidence. I'll send you some links.
I definitely want some links. We should also put links both in the Discord and or description for this because I would like to be able to direct people to the things we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that.
She's really cool. She seems to be a really interesting presence in the movie, just in like the mystique that the narrative gives her.
Yes.
I love how once we start to be given the idea that she's evil, she's never shot like fully or directly. She's always like blurred and in the background, or she's obscured by something.
Kind of cloaked in shadow.
And I think that's
Especially
really
when like the
cool.
shaman walks up on her. There
Oh
was
my
no part of me
God,
that was
that's
not
such a-
convinced that she was not evil.
That's such a good scene where it's like just from being in her presence, he's just bleeding and vomiting, and he can't stop until he gets away from her. Like that's such an incredible scene, and that sets such a good tone. Like holy shit, it was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if maybe she's shot like that way to indicate that like we don't know the truth about her, though.
Mhm.
Do you think that's like symbolic, maybe?
Wouldn't be surprised. We don't know the truth about her.
We don't really.
Even when we get to the end, all we know is she was not the villain. We don't really know why she was there. She just was around.
Yeah.
So the idea is that she's a local guardian spirit of the town that's trying to protect the town from the devil. And you see this largely, you see kind of at the houses of the various victims, the like wilted flowers that at the end, when she's warning Jong-gu not to go home and to wait for the rooster to crow 3 times when it's safe, when he goes home early, he passes under the archway and there's this flower, and after he passes, it wilts. And the thought is that she was putting these kind of protective charms in place to kind of like ensnare and trap the devil and the shaman. But people kept not believing her, and then they would die. But she is really interesting. When she's first introduced is at that scene where Jong-gu and the other policemen are at the second crime scene kind of outside the morning after. And I think they're supposed to be collecting evidence or something. And she's kind of kneeled down, throwing rocks at them, to kind of as a reference to he who is without sin casts the first stone.
Oh.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that's so interesting. It's so cool. There's so much symbolism in this movie, and I really love it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys talk about things, because Stacy just called me, and I feel she might need to be let in.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a lot of scenes. I really liked the way that the movie builds over the course of its length, because with a 2.5 hour movie, you have to be really careful about building things. And I feel like this movie takes some cues from The Shining in the way that it builds, because there are a lot of scenes that it seems like it's building towards something, and then the scene just kind of like ends and the next scene begins and it's just built toward nothing. And that's something that happens a lot in The Shining. I feel like they sort of took cues from that for this movie, and it winds up making it feel even more huge than it is at the end when stuff starts really going crazy.
Yeah.
That's really well done. I like how they did that.
Mm-hmm. I loved the storytelling that they did by actually having, instead of people just sitting around and going, my friend was out hiking and then he fell down a hill and he said the Japanese man's eyes were red and he tried to eat him. Instead of doing that, it just cut to that scene and then it cut away from it, and we're like on the overnight shift in the police station. He's like, that wasn't real. That's not a scary story at all. And he's like, what do you mean it's not a scary story? That's the scariest story I've ever heard in my life.
It reminds me of an Ant-Man where
Yes.
they have the one guy who describes how things happen, and we see the thing happening as he describes it. Not necessarily as it really happened.
Yeah.
It gave me that same feeling of an unreliable narrator, where it's like, maybe that's how it happened. Maybe that's not specific to how it actually happened.
Yeah. It made me think of a really similar scene to the one you've just described that's in Reservoir Dogs.
Yep.
I don't know why I thought of Reservoir Dogs before Ant-Man, because I've only seen Reservoir Dogs once, like 8 years ago, and I've seen Ant-Man like 3 times, far more recently than that, but
Fair enough.
It is.
No, I had the same thought about something else recently that's similar, so I feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that kind of storytelling sort of scene where they just show the thing and then like a person reacting to it.
Yeah. It is hard because you have those scenes, but also Jong-gu has kind of an experience with a similar experience with the Japanese man, where it bleeds together with the scene where he first meets the woman in white, where he's at the crime scene. He's talking to the woman in white. She's saying that she saw something, and he's trying to get evidence from her. And then she disappears, and he goes around back looking for her, and then finds the Japanese man eating a deer. And then he chases Jong-gu and is standing over him with red eyes, and then goes to like eat him. And then Jong-gu wakes up from a nightmare.
I did like later when he's like, oh, that dream I had. And the woman's just like, but was it a dream? Was it actually a dream?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best description I've gotten for those is those scenes are the devil trying to possess people.
Oh. Okay.
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 And you get
Makes
this
sense to me.
imagery of at the beginning of the movie, you see the Japanese man fishing, and at one point the shaman describes, I think Jong-gu asks like why his daughter, and the shaman describes, it's not specifically about your daughter, it's just the Japanese man casts a line, and then whoever like bites, he's just like fishing basically. And so Jong-gu, some way or another, there are a few theories as to why it happened, but is able to not fall for the possession, but then his daughter does get possessed.
I would like to posit the theory that Jong-gu does not get possessed because he is simply incompetent and
That's one
doesn't
of the
know how
theories.
to get. Yes, oh, that makes me.
He's just an innocent,
kinda
pure
like in,
boy. An
It's
innocent,
kind of like
dumb
I'm
pure
watching
boy.
this
Diamond is
movie.
Unbreakable when Okuyasu gets killed, and then he's just like, no thanks, and he comes back to life.
Yeah.
He's like, I think I'd rather stay alive. And you're like, oh.
I made so many notes through this about how he's just bad at his job because like we're constantly getting the chief like, oh, where were you? And he comes in, he's like, I'm so sorry, my daughter is very sick. And he's like, oh, so it's your daughter's fault you're late now. So like it's very clear this man has a poor track record with showing up to work.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He's just sitting there
His
while
daughter
he's getting
seems to be parenting him, which
Yeah.
is
he's sitting there getting pelted with rocks, and he's just like, "Hey, you better stop because I'm gonna get mad soon. I'm gonna get mad soon if you hit me with one more rock, and then I'm gonna do something."
I love-
you better look
I love
out.
when that scene starts and you're like aware that she's been throwing rocks, not really at them even, but just toward them. But then like the scene changes and you see that there's just so many rocks in the road.
There's like 50
and he's
rocks
like,
all
"Will
around
you
him."
Stop.
Oh, it's so. And then he shows up late to the other murder case.
He shows up late to
and then he
every
gets
murder
jumped,
case.
and he's just like, while he's being attacked by one of the possessed people.
And everybody
And
around him is just like,
every-
come on, dude, get it together.
Yeah, and then the person leaves, and no one helps him up. No one asks him if he's okay. They all are just moving on with their life, and he's just like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed right now. And then his daughter comes in to bring him a change of clothes, and she's like, hey, stupid, you gotta eat your food.
the comedy and the characterization in this movie are incredible because as we were talking earlier, Hyojin really reminds me of my youngest sister. She's got that same sassy attitude. Like, kids say the darndest things. One time my little sister, I've told this story to I think everyone here before, but you guys get to hear it. One time my sister, when she was 9, looked at my arm and said, you have black hair on your arm that men can see, and that's why they don't want to marry you.
Oh.
It's true.
like-
I had big second guesses
I was like, thanks a lot,
when
kid.
I saw the black hair on her arm.
But
bet
that's
that
like
changes
the
things.
that's
does.
the whole like vibe that I get from Hyojin is that she's just like
Sorry.
she's just the sassiest child. She finds her parents in the car doing the do, and she's just like,
He was so guilty about it, I thought he was having an affair.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, and
obviously
then
you don't
Hyojin
want to have your
has
kid catch you.
When he asks her how much she saw, she says, I won't tell.
right?
So
I
I was like,
could
is
not.
was that not his wife? Or like
I hadn't
whoa.
seen much of his wife at the time. I'm still not sure if he was having an affair or
He
not.
wasn't. It was his
wasn't.
I don't
wife,
think
but
he
I
can
think
manage to.
I think
I think he's too dumb to have an affair.
in
I
Korean
think he would
culture-
accidentally tell people.
in Korean culture, and I think largely speaking a lot of Asian cultures, there's kind of like the image you have to put off of being very like professional and like not show like weakness or
Which is why they have to do it in the
the
car,
car.
instead of in their own home where they live.
yeah, because
Thin walls.
you don't want, I don't fucking know. I
don't
think
know.
You don't
anything
want
I could
your
say
grandma who lives there.
anything further that I say of trying to guess could come across as insensitive,
Fair.
and I
don't know. When
I don't think that's good.
When they finish,
Yeah, no.
he's like, I'm getting too old for this. And she's like, no, you're not. That's ridiculous. And all I was thinking is like, the only thing these two are too old for is not having privacy. Like, this is, you shouldn't have to go fuck in your car.
Well,
Just
they live
live
with
with
their
their
mother-in-law and their daughter.
Yeah, that's fair because I could not
No.
imagine
Yeah,
if I still lived with a family doing that. That would be so uncomfy.
No.
But yeah, I love the characterization because Hyojin comes off as a really strong character, and you can see how she changes as she's possessed, but how she also stays the same. It's not like a super drastic change because like something I don't love about a lot of demon possession stuff is that it's always like the sweet, perfect kid who gets possessed and then starts swearing. Hyojin is already a little sassy
she was
girl.
blackmailing her dad somehow into getting her snacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I think
She's
it's
like-
this thing of
she's-
like not telling like the town or telling the
Mhm.
mother-in-law.
Mhm.
She's chastising him at work and then being super cute to his
His coworkers clearly would rather have her there.
Yeah.
She seems more responsible.
Yeah,
She
but
kinda
and then
does.
so when she acts up later, you're not really sure how much of it necessarily is the demon and how much of it is a very distressed child.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he was doing his first round of questioning, and she was getting like really pushbacky about like the Japanese man. I was just like, oh no, I don't want to hear how this story like concludes, because it seemed like she was like just in a bad place and didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and then that was not the case. In fact, she was possessed. But I'm just sitting here thinking like, dude, you gotta push for some of these answers if you want answers, because I was immediately in the mindset of this isn't a supernatural movie. This is a detective movie, and the detective needs to figure out what's going on, which is not the case.
At
But
what point?
Well, it
in
did
the
mesh
movie
those
did
two
you think-
genres really well.
At what point in the movie did Jungwoo come across to you as a detective?
at no point did he come
Okay.
across as a competent
I
detective.
mean, not
Ah.
a competent detective, but he do be finding things out. So I'll give
He
him that.
Didn't, because he doesn't look like a U.S. uniformed police officer. I saw him and I'm like, oh, he's dressed slightly different. He's being brought out, special called out to a crime scene as the first scene of the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, maybe he's a detective. And a lot of the first like 15, 20 minutes, I'm like, this could be a Morgan Freeman detective movie.
If Morgan
It probably
Freeman
still
were,
could have.
honestly.
I wouldn't want to see that one
No.
because I don't think Morgan Freeman would balance in this world at all.
No,
Because
He has too much gravitas. I think
Yeah.
a lot of what worked about having this specific type of protagonist was that his incompetence lent a lot of
sincerity.
a lot of comedy, and then a lot of tension because you were begging him not to run back home, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
knew that
You know
he
he's
is
gonna.
not smart
He
and
cares
steady
too
enough.
much about his family
Yeah.
and understands the situation too little to not run back home.
And
Yeah.
it's really rough to watch because it feels maybe some of the most tension that I've felt in a horror story since I watched Haunting of Hill House, because there's some moments in Haunting of Hill House where, like, given the characters and the way that they've been set up, you have that same feeling of, oh God, please no, but you also know that, like, based on the character you've been shown, there's no way it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But like I was gonna say something specific about this movie. Oh, I was gonna say that, like, incompetent characters. What, going back to the Endless and Spring, how we didn't like two specific characters from those movies.
Mhm.
It didn't work there because I think we were shown the opposite. We were shown that these characters were kind of incompetent, and then near the end, we're being told, oh, but they're gonna make the right decision.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's like, nothing you've shown me about this character makes me think that he's going to make the decision to leave this cult.
Yeah.
Nothing about that, like, makes his decision to leave the cult make sense. He's constantly throughout the movie shown a different character. But in this movie, we're constantly shown a man who cares a lot about his family.
Yeah.
He acts very impulsively.
Like when he
Um,
put together his first lynch mob.
Yeah.
I saw that happen. And I'm like, dude, you're a cop. You got to have other outlets here. And then
Yeah.
when he put together his second one, I'm like, dude,
Come
you
on, this
cannot
didn't
go
work.
murder this man.
My thing was, like, the fact that he had the shaman stop the ritual as it seemed to be coming to an end is the same
Where
kind
his
of
daughter,
feeling.
who he assumes is having like a possession thing happening, begging him to stop. People who, if you believe that your daughter is possessed, one would also assume you would believe that that is not your daughter asking you to make the thing stop
Yeah.
if it is actually working.
Clearly. He's never watched any exorcism movies. Lucky him.
Exactly.
But
Someday we'll
Yeah,
watch
it's
The
like-
Exorcist here.
well, there's like the scene where the shaman is talking about doing the death hex and they haven't done it yet, and he's like, you'd better not do
Mhm.
anything between then and now that's gonna mess it up. And he gives him like a list of
Yeah.
things to avoid, and he's like,
Yeah, he's
none
like,
of any of this.
Clean food, no sex, no drinking.
Yeah.
Don't swear.
And I
Go
have
to
written
bed
in my
before
notes from
sundown.
that
Like
point-
a slew of things.
At that point in my notes, I literally just wrote, you already know our boy Jong-gu is going to mess up the hex. Like, as soon as he starts
Mhm.
saying it, like, as soon as you find out that Jong-gu is capable of messing the hex up, you know he's gonna. Like,
It was so, I was so nervous. And then he's watching the hex happen. And
Which is an
he's watching it,
insane scene,
and
by
he
the way.
clear. Oh my gosh, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
it's so good.
that was honestly a scene worth trigger warning in and of itself, almost. Just because, not because it's triggering as much as
it's just
It's so
much.
overwhelming.
it is a
It-
overwhelming scene.
If I were there in real life, I would probably have passed out from sensory overload.
Mhm.
There's just too much going on.
It's just the music's
yeah,
going
no.
crazy, and he's like dipping his face in the blood and like spitting mouthfuls
Yeah.
of blood onto those swords. Like, what in the world?
Wow,
Yeah.
So good.
it's
It was-
intense.
It was such a good scene, bookended with, you know, you're not sure what's up with the Japanese man,
Yeah, and it's intercut with him as
And-
well, and oh.
and it like you
And the
intercut
kid
it
just
with
screaming her
the
head
kid is
off.
screaming constantly. The
Yes.
Japanese man is having a bad time.
yeah.
And the shaman, who I was at that time only just thinking, oh, this man's not a hack. Like,
Yeah.
at that moment, I'm like, this guy's legit,
Like, oh,
and someone
for
is
real.
dying.
Yeah.
Now, that makes me wonder, though, and obviously Emma is not here to answer this question, and I'm sure she has an answer.
She will be back.
Was the shaman doing a fake ritual?
Hmm.
Because, as it is revealed, he was working with the demon.
Right.
And as it is revealed in a deleted scene too, which, you know, deleted scene's a deleted scene. But instead of
I
the
didn't watch no deleted scenes.
oh no, it's a deleted ending that
Okay.
was going to be done on the movie.
All right.
So non-canonical ending. However, it does just double confirm what's going on. Instead of him just going away with the box of photographs
Uh-huh.
that prove that he was working, it shows the Japanese man sitting on a bench by the roadside, and he tries to entice a child to come over by offering candy. But the kid's mom pulls her away before she can get there, and then the car shows up, driven by the shaman, and he picks him up and they leave.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm kind
I'm
of
glad it
they
ended the
didn't
way it did.
do that because
Because this feels like an after credits scene almost, because we ended on an emotional like
Yeah.
downpour moment. It ended very cleanly. Also, every time the shaman was like, "Get to your house, I'm on my way," as we're watching him drive to Seoul,
yeah.
and it's just like,
And it's
you're
like-
not
Yeah,
going
he
to
keeps
his
saying
house.
that he's close, and it's like so obvious that he's not close.
Yeah, he says, "I'm on my way to your house," while
While the camera shows him taking the soul
Jong-gu
exit.
yeah, he's taking the wrong exit, and while Jong-gu's at his house, he's at the shaman's house,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Yeah, I'm on my way to your house. Meet me there." And Jong-gu is walking home, and on his way home, he is stopped. There is no world that the shaman would not have gotten there so much sooner.
Yeah.
That should have our sweet, very dumb boy should have put two and two together that there was a bigger problem. Man, I love the fact that a theory is that he is just too bad at what he does to be possessed.
It's I feel like that's something that like I see in stories, and I love it when I see it in stories, is that a character is just, because didn't we, like, Okuyasu's one that we brought up.
Yeah.
I feel like there are other characters, specifically in manga that I've read, where there's been like a character that's just too dumb to be possessed or to be
Yeah,
manipulated.
stuff just doesn't work because they're too dumb. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, Jeff, I feel like you've watched Demon Slayer more recently than I have. Is there a moment like that with Inosuke? or with Zenitsu? It feels like there might be because they're both really dumb.
I mean, Zenitsu is literally so incompetent that he only even gets anything done when he's not even conscious.
Oh,
I
big
need to
dumb
watch
They
the
dumb
have
show.
yet to
boy.
explain that in the anime so far.
I am so excited for that. Oh, Emma, you took too long to get back, and now we're talking about Demon
I
Slayer.
had a feeling.
Demon Slayer
I was
related to the movie.
yes,
kind of.
absolutely. It
There's a
is.
demon.
Essentially.
There are demons.
Which actually, it does actually bring me into something I wanted to talk about, which is, we talked about this at the end of last... Oh, it looks like we might be frozen. Can you guys hear me?
No, it's just Jeff.
Oh, it's just
Oh
Jeff.
no, I thought I was okay.
Jeff's
can hear
making
you.
duck
Um,
face.
But I brought
Damn,
this up
it
at the
refreshed.
beginning or at the end of last episode. Is like, the meaning of demon in different languages is very different.
Oh, okay.
Or in different cultures, because like the idea of what a demon is in Christian mythology, as it were, is very specifically the enemy of God. But in some other cultures, demon can be a catch-all term or a like umbrella term for specific mythological creatures, in the way that like banshees are a specific mythological creature, or the fae are, or trolls are. If you say demon, in some cultures there can be different like subcultures of like demons that are different kinds of spirits that have different MOs. So it was really interesting because specifically I'm thinking of Japanese mythology has a lot of you say demon, but it can be like specific different, or you can say a ghost, but you're not. Ghosts have specific subsets. They died a specific way. They have a specific method of stealing souls. You know, you look at them and you smile at them and they kill you, some of them. And other ones it's like, oh, if you're sad and lonely, they'll trade you sake for a funny dance. You know, it's like there's different connotations to different creatures. But it's very interesting to me that in this movie you have the word ghost and demon are used a lot, but the woman in white, whose name translates to no name, I think, she is a very kind of ambivalent sort of spirit. And she fits that kind of more ambiguous, like what is she doing? Is she good or evil necessarily, or does she have her own motives? But the Japanese man is way more aligned with the Western Christian idea of what a demon is.
Okay.
He has the stigmata. He cites Bible verses. He possesses people. That's all very, in my experience, and from what I'm familiar with anyway, that all fits way more with Christian mythology than what I'm familiar with for like the way that East Asian cultures associate ghosts and spirits and demons.
So
but that's just what I was thinking.
Thematically, then, that kind of cements him as a cultural invader in more ways than one.
That's what I was
That's
thinking
kinda
watching the
interesting.
movie initially. From my like rather outsider like take on it. That's kind of what I saw.
That's cool.
I like that take a
I
lot.
was wondering, I was going to ask you guys to see if any of you knew this. I know a lot of European cultures prior to the spread of Christianity didn't even have a concept of like a universal force of evil, like a Satan. So I was kind of wondering if traditional Korean religion had that kind of a concept at all, or if that is a Christian addition to it. Does anyone know that?
I do
No,
not know.
I'm not
Okay.
at all familiar with East Asian religions.
Okay, neither am I. That's why I'm asking. Yeah, I know in a lot
I
of...
like the
What's that?
I like I like to study like some of like the different creature myths, because that's the kind of mythology that I personally have always really liked. Did the same thing with like Celtic and Norse creature myths as well. But specific religions and the way that they are practiced, I am super unfamiliar with.
Okay, because I know coming into things with a Western Christianized kind of perspective, lots of times when you learn other cultures, ancient mythologies and stuff, like Egyptian, Nordic kind of stuff, those are completely separate. I'm just listing them as examples because they're things that I know a little bit about. But they don't really have, like, when we learn about them, we learn about characters like Set or Loki as being almost like analogs to Satan, because that's the way that we are conditioned to look at everything. But if you look at them more in the context of the culture, they're really just trickster figures. And that's really how it is with a lot of things, a lot of, just they're just, a lot of cultures just don't have a concept of something being exclusively evil, or if they're being a force of evil in the universe.
I thought Egyptian religion had like evil gods.
Like Set and Osiris, like it's the same kind of. I'm not super 100 familiar with Egyptian, but I always had the idea that it's very similar to how Loki pulled a lot of really crappy stuff on like his blood brothers who he's supposed to be connected with. I always got the like impression that was the relationship between like Set and Osiris, and all of that was that he was power hungry, but not necessarily like in a way that made him the force of evil.
Right.
The same way that like Satan is.
He did kill Osiris.
But I'm not.
That is a thing that happened.
He did kill Osiris, but Loki
Osiris was
did
okay.
like.
But what about like?
Well, he got better.
He got better.
He got better.
But what about like Nyarlathotep?
I don't know that one. My Egyptian mythology knowledge is very surface level, and you have just exposed me.
I don't like Emma's face. What are you?
It's a Cthulhu
What are you playing
mythos
at,
god
Emma?
that is like
I knew it.
connected to Egyptian religion.
Okay.
I was gonna say, speaking of Loki, though, Loki being made out to be the ultimate evil is 100% because Christians came in, and rather than try and build the whole Christian myth and try and explain this new Christian myth to them, they're like, yeah, everything that you guys think happened with the gods did happen, and then the world that you think it's going to end, it did end, and then Christianity started afterwards.
Is that what they did?
That is 100% what they did. They're like after Ragnarok, there were two humans, and they were Adam and Eve. That's literally what Christianity said to the Norse pagans.
Okay, because I know they did something
tried
very similar in Russia, which is the reason that the Russian Orthodox Church exists. Is basically Catholicism got there, and they were like, all this stuff that you guys are doing, all your nature gods and stuff. Yeah, that's right. It's just you got to call them by these names. They're not gods anymore. They're saints, and you just put this dude right at the top, and you're set. You can keep all your other traditions. And
that's very similar to what they did with Norse mythology.
Okay, yeah.
It's funny that we're talking about this in the context of cultural invasion,
right?
Within the context in the movie, is that Christian missionaries specifically,
they just be going places and messing things up.
Yeah,
they have been historically very good at manipulating and being very smart about how they do evangelize, and I think that's really interesting.
I mean, we talked about that a little bit in Krampus as well.
We did.
The church was like, okay, I don't remember if it was a thing of like, we're gonna kill you or something, but like you have to give up these gods, and the people were like, no. And then they were like, okay, well,
but they're evil.
But okay, so they have to be incorporated into like our thing. And so that's how like Krampus and all those like local traditional things were like, oh, Krampus is just like evil Saint Nick and punishes the bad kids, and oh, these little demon creatures that run around town and do stuff are just Saint Nick's helpers and kind of usher in the way.
Right?
Yeah.
I do find it really interesting. And that's why I find like extra canon, like by the Protestant like definition of extra canon, but biblical stories to be really interesting. Because a lot of them are just really outside what you are taught in Bible school.
Yeah.
Some of them kind of out there.
They do, but yeah, no. I just thought it was really interesting that the demon in this movie, like that the Japanese man, was the most Western Christian demon I think I've ever seen in Eastern media before.
Yeah. And it was so cool.
It's interesting.
And it was wild. It was a wild reveal.
Yeah.
When he did the stigmata, I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
I do not like.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite demon things is the stigmata.
Stigmata.
Yeah.
I love the
One of my least favorite Catholic things too. Ayo.
Ayo.
I love
Catholics don't come for me.
the couple of shots that we get. Oh, I'm about to shit on Catholicism in a minute. You can
Okay,
they
go
can come
for
after
it.
me.
Let's do
I love
it.
the shot that we get where he's like almost fully transformed, and we see, and he's like holding the camera in front of his face, so he's still like, you don't get a perfect good look at him, but he's just
Yeah.
talking to the priest while taking pictures of him. Like, I love that scene. That was so good.
So
I
good.
love the weird camera thing that he has going on too,
I
where
love
he's
the
just like,
camera thing. That's a
I
cool
may be a
thing.
timeless demon, but it doesn't mean I don't want to scrapbook. And he just
Well-
takes pictures of all the evil things he does and keeps them in his little cave.
Yeah, and I love how that sets up to make it so simple to show that the shaman is on his side. Because as soon as we see the shaman holding a camera and taking pictures of the scene, like we know exactly what's happening there.
There was something else
So good.
that both the shaman and the Japanese man did that
Oh,
hinted at them being involved with one another.
Oh,
Do you
They
know
wore
what it
diapers.
is? They wore the Japanese diapers.
oh,
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Mhm.
I didn't
yeah.
either.
In the one scene where he's talking
Oh.
to Jonggu about casting the death hex, and he tells him how much money he needs and stuff, he like in that same scene, he just like walks past Jonggu into another room and like doesn't close a door or anything. He just starts stripping his clothes off and puts on like a tracksuit.
Yep.
Mhm.
I remember
and
that.
you see that he's wearing the same kind of diaper.
Yep.
Nice.
Not like
Very interesting.
not like in the sense of a Western diaper.
Right,
It's
right,
just, yeah.
right. Although I do love the scene where they have the conversation about that when he's like, just told the scary story at night in the police station. And the guy's just like, well, but why would he be wearing a diaper out in the middle of the woods? And he's like, well, lots of people wear diapers because of incontinence and stuff. And he's like, well, why would he be out in the woods to deal with his incontinence?
Actually,
It feels like a Letterkenny bit. It's so
kinda
funny the way that it
does.
just rolls.
so while we're talking about that scene, I would like to highlight how that scene was shot.
The diaper scene?
Where no, not the diaper scene, the woods scene,
Mhm.
where he's like, the guy is afraid and we are afraid, but we don't really know why. We just know that something isn't really cool, and then it's like, oh, cool, he's eating a deer raw. That's bad too. He hides, and then you get that twig snap where every single sound stops
Yeah.
as that twig snaps,
Yeah.
and it's dead silent. Oh my gosh, it was so good.
Yeah.
That was really, really good.
There's so much stuff that this movie does so well.
Right. It really does a lot of things so well.
You gave it a 7.5.
Because
gave it
didn't
an
understand the ending. I'm confused.
I'm sorry that the stigmata, man, wasn't clear enough, Jeff.
I was committed to thinking he was a good guy at that point.
Me
I was
too.
confused about the woman in white.
I think they do a really good job. I think that's another thing that they do really well is showing that if someone you're willing to give someone so much leeway depending on how they act, because it doesn't matter how incriminating the stuff this guy has is. You based on the way he acts, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. You want to find maybe he wasn't possessed the whole time. You want to find an explanation for that. Whereas the woman in white is so cold and standoffish and efficient in her presentation that and mysterious.
You don't want to believe that she's good because she doesn't
She
seem
acts-
like a
she
good
d-
person.
she's not
Sketchy.
vulnerable enough.
Yeah.
She doesn't let anyone into her personal. We don't know what happened to her, if she's dead or if she's a spirit. She's not willing to kind of open up. Not that the Japanese man is either verbally, but you see through his actions and through his expressions that he like appears to be just a scared person. She never lets you in that way, and that's why I feel like you're way less willing to give her the benefit of the doubt throughout the whole movie. But even up until he admits to being the devil, you think to yourself, maybe there's an explanation for why he's been doing all this. But with her, she doesn't do anything overtly evil either.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, well, but is she good though?
Yeah.
I mean, she makes the shaman throw up, but he sucks.
Yeah. That was cool though. So speaking of kind of sympathizing with the Japanese man, or being able to sympathize with him a little bit more, I think it's really cool, the end scene between him and the priest, where the priest has gone to confront him and says, like, definitively, like, you're the devil, because he asked the Japanese man to show him his true form or something, and the Japanese man, well, who do you think I am? And the priest is like, I know you're the devil. And they're talking, and I think the Japanese man looked sad or something. I don't remember exactly. And the priest asked, like, what was wrong? And the Japanese man was like, well, how am I supposed to feel? You've just told me that I'm the devil. And just plays, like, these small little, like, manipulative sympathy cards to where the priest is, like, eventually like, well, if you just tell me who you are, or show me your true form, I'll let you go. And
I loved his retort to that, just being, well, you've already made up your mind. Whatever I do isn't going to change it.
Yeah, exactly. And
similarly, his retort at the same time being, what makes you think that I will let you go?
Yes, I love that transition.
Which was so cool. But I don't remember if it's an actual biblical thing or if it's just something that I picked up from studying, like, and reading about exorcisms and various other things. But the idea is that, like, during an exorcism, when you're confronting a demon, you have to, like, tell it with authority and certainty, like, hey, get out of here, you ass twat.
That's what you're supposed to say, yeah.
That's what you're supposed to say, but you say it in
direct
That's what I
quote
was
from
taught.
the priest book.
And, like, the priest enters into this situation with that kind of, like, conviction and certainty.
Yeah.
But then the Japanese man kind of undercuts that and makes him sympathize and kind of like, oh, poor old me. And the priest starts getting uncertain. And then Demon Boy's like, haha, bitch, psych.
Gotcha.
Now I'm not gonna let you leave. You're gonna die. I just think it's such, like, this cool thing about, like, doubt in the context of religion and spirituality.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I fucking love that end scene so goddamn much. It's really so good.
Yeah. Y'all mind if I go off on Catholicism and exorcism movies for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it.
All right,
Speaking
so
of exorcisms,
going into this, I was really excited to get the non-Western take on demon possession, and I was mostly really excited to see a possession-themed movie without Catholicism in it. And god damn it, we were so close.
So close.
But I am so tired of exorcism movies acting like Catholicism is the ultimate truth of the nature of the universe.
yeah.
Like, I'm so sick of that always being the assumption. Like, somebody gets possessed by a demon, and what is shown to be an ordinarily rather non-religious family is like, oh, you know what that means? We gotta go call the kid diddler so that he can come get this demon out of my daughter. Like, nobody thinks that. When something bad happens in your life, nobody says, oh, I've got to go get a priest. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And also, just the flow of every exorcism movie is kind of the same. You know, they call a regular bitch priest, and then the demon is like, "You're a regular bitch priest. You can't get me out of here." And the priest is like, "Well, I'm in way over my head here. We got to call a priest who smokes." And then the priest who smokes shows up, and he's like, "Sometimes I wonder if God even cares about us at all." And somehow that makes him more powerful against the demon than the other priest is. I don't get that at all, because the like exorcism expert priest is always shown to have like very shaky faith. He's always shown to be very doubtful of God, which should make him weaker in the face of a demon. Makes no sense to me at all. But then also the priest who smokes shows up, and after being all existential for a minute, he goes to the room with the demon in it, and he's like, "I'm gonna school y'all on the most basic exorcism shit. You gotta find out the demon's name first," which is something that literally everybody knows. I don't know why the bitch priest in the intro of the movie doesn't try it first more often. But like, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I know I haven't gotten to any semblance of a point. All I'm saying is exorcism movies are dumb.
I'm with you,
but
you said something interesting that made me think
what was
about
that?
in like
It was
traditional
the part where you said you hate
exorcism.
Catholics.
Traditional exorcism movies, they're like, oh, you got to know the name of the demon. And in this movie, we never learn the Japanese man's name.
Oh,
Mm.
and he
Mm.
does win.
I
How
just
about
find that interesting.
Huh.
Turns out his name is Japanese man with 2 N's at the end.
Of course.
Well, it's really
German.
interesting to me because the name that we aren't given the woman in white's name in
True.
the movie itself, I don't think, but
Mhm.
we are given it in the IMDb and in the like plot synopsis,
Oh.
and we are. You can be like, you can learn and be aware of the fact that her name means no name, but it's still a name. Unlike the Japanese man, we aren't consistently referring to her as the woman in white. We are given a name for her, even if it's extra canon. So I find that really interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have other things to complain about with Catholicism?
Everything about it, but like things that are relevant here.
Nothing topical.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing immediately relevant, I don't think.
We've been recording a while.
We are running long.
Let me launch into this is what I think things in the movie mean.
All right.
I would
So
really like
hit
that.
us with it.
Let's go.
Okay. So we get them kind of investigating all of these deaths. At the second one, which is where we meet Il Guang, aka Woman in White, and
Wait, what'd you call her?
Il Guang.
Wasn't
her
Il
name?
Guang I thought her name was Mu Myung.
Yeah, Mu Myung
Oh,
is
yeah.
the name that I'm seeing.
Mu Myung.
Il Guang
Yeah.
is
shaman.
the shaman. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Did they ever
Um,
mention his
figured
name
that
in the
one out.
narrative?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember.
But so at that place, I think it's Mu Myung or one of the neighbors mentions that like someone was sick and they hired a shaman to come and try to help. And then all of this bad shit happened. And so it's a very kind of like thrown out there comment. Not a lot of significance is given to it, but then when Jong-Goo's family and his daughter start having troubles and they seek out the shaman, Il Guang comes to the scene, finds all this stuff, finds the crow in the soy sauce barrel, and gets rid of it because that's kind of a warding protection by the woman in white.
Uh-huh.
And then he does his ritual, which he says is like a death hex and is trying to get the demon's influence off of the daughter. And we already talked about kind of the demon's side of his ritual, like what he was doing. But as Il Guang is doing his shamanistic ritual, part of it is he's got like these things that he stabs into like this dummy, basically, or a mannequin kind of.
Mhm.
And as he does that, the daughter is reacting as if she's getting stabbed in those areas as well. And this whole death hex thing is actually a ceremony that's trying to get the demon to take control of the daughter's body and basically kill the daughter, so that the demon can take full control. But
Ah.
the father interrupts this ritual, and so it's not able to be completed.
Ah.
Once again, he bumbles his way into a victory.
Yeah,
for him.
exactly.
That's the only victory he bumbles into, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he takes the daughter to the hospital, and then they go to Devil Boy's house, and he ends up dying. Then Il Guang goes and drives to Jonggu's house after Demon Boy died.
Mhm.
Hyojin is feeling a little bit better, and as Il Guang goes to visit Jonggu, he encounters Mu Myung, the woman in white, and that's when he starts vomiting things, seemingly because she set a trap and he kind of walked into it, and so he had to leave. And then blah 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 blah. Eventually, Jonggu is going home, and is told that, okay, so the shaman is feeling sick, throws up and all that, runs off. He goes back to his house, basically, and starts trying to pack everything up and run away because he's scared of the woman in white. When he does that, his car is attacked by this plague of locusts on the highway, and he has to pull over and stop, and sees that it was basically like this spiritual hallucination sort of thing.
Man, I loved that too.
Yeah, that the devil's not gonna just let him go, and that he needs to go back. And so he goes back and starts sowing doubt into Jonggu's mind about the woman in white, saying that it's actually her causing all of these problems. And this is when Jonggu comes across the woman in white and is talking to her, kind of interrogating her, trying to figure out what's going on. Woman in white is saying, "You can't go home yet. Wait for the rooster to crow 3 times." He sees his daughter's hairpin kind of behind the woman in white, which triggers him seeing the victim's other belongings being held by the woman in white in various scenes of the movie. And so this kind of doubt manifests in him of like, I can't trust this woman. And so he runs off. And then, as we talked about, his family's dead, except for his daughter. But then he gets back home. His daughter had killed their family. She's not responding to him at all. And he's found in the morning amongst his dead family, and Il Guang comes back and takes pictures of their dead bodies, because culturally it's seen taking pictures of the dead is like a big taboo sort of thing.
Oh.
Makes sense.
And obviously you see that in other cultures of like pictures steal the souls of people. And the demon was using pictures of people to cast these like rituals and stuff on them as well. And then Il Guang takes the photos, puts them in the box, drives off. There's a deleted ending scene that's on YouTube where the Japanese man is sitting kind of by the side of the road. And Il Guang drives up, picks him up, and they drive off together. And then the woman in white is standing in the road by the town, watching them as they leave. But yes, so shaman, devil boy working together and are evil. Woman in white is kind of a protecting force for the town. But the town kind of screwed the pooch and never really trusted her. And a lot of them died. And that's the story.
Okay.
I like that.
I really liked this movie a lot.
That
It's a
brings it to
really
a solid
good movie.
8.5, I think.
Yes!
You brought him
Wow.
up by a full number.
Full number.
I'm proud of you, Jeff.
And now Nina's the one sitting in the bottom garbage pit of the votes with
Yeah,
a
Nina,
with
why
a
did you hate this movie
whole
so
8.
much?
Oh my god.
Hey, she would have given it a 10 if not
Jeff
for her
loosening
ADHD.
a tie. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the same problem with so many other movies that are great movies, but you could not pay me to watch them again.
I feel like Phenomena probably hit you in a similar way, but
It
not
did.
because it was
I found it
long,
ridiculous,
just because it was
though.
hard to follow.
It was so weird, but I've talked about my thoughts on
It's just
Phenomena.
dumb.
Other
We've got a
movies
whole
I think
episode
of,
on it.
Hateful Eight falls into the category.
Oh,
I love
totally.
Hateful Eight. I'm never gonna watch it again.
I didn't
The
like it all
Joker's
that
not even.
much, but
I love like Agatha Christie style murder mysteries, and it was one of those, so I loved it. But also like I feel the same way about I wish I remembered what I was going to talk about. Oh, The Joker. It's not even that long, but I would not
Joker,
watch that
yeah.
movie again. I found it to be a slog, and I did not enjoy much of it. And there's a bunch of movies that like yes, technically I can acknowledge that they are good movies.
yeah.
And this one is better than most of those other ones. Like this one I enjoyed more than most of those other ones because I wouldn't even give The Joker an 8, and I thought it was
So-
technically really good.
So
But,
on a scale
yeah.
of long movies that you would never watch again, this is basically
This
a
is a
10
10.
out of 10.
This is 100% a 10 on the like long movies that I would
I'll
never
take
watch
it.
again scale.
I'll take it.
There you go.
If anyone tells me to watch The Irishman, I will kill you. I will materialize in your house and I will kill
We'll
you.
watch that one on my own then.
Where would The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly fall on that list?
I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's an
I've seen
11
it
because-
twice.
No, it's not on the list because she would watch it again.
I have watched it several times, and I will watch it again before I die. The Once Upon a Time in the
It'll
West
take
is
that
my
long.
favorite movie. My Once Upon a Time in the West is my favorite movie ever, and I don't remember how long that movie is, but it's very long.
It is very long.
Huh. All right.
So there are movies that surpass that, but I think you'll recognize that most of them, if not all of them, are westerns. So
They
So
tend
this
to run long.
this
They do.
episode is running long.
It is.
I feel like there's only a couple things left to do.
we
That's
do need
true.
to run through Noah's notes really quick, if we don't mind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
I'll-
ask. We need a
I'll be
Noah's
quick
Note
about
speed
it.
run. Jeff,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
sort of theme song were you thinking for
All
Noah's
right, I
Notes?
gotta go for the fastest one that I have available. I've been listening to some Ash Nico lately, so the intro to the Noah's Notes segment is Stupid Notes Think That I Read Them. That's it.
Love it. Nina,
That's pretty
go.
good. Okay. I've got to actually read through these. We got, is that
God
a
damn
barbed
it,
wire nest? I remember at the beginning of the movie, there's that nest
Yeah.
that the guy has made.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever get a full explanation for that, but it sure looked freaky.
I loved that. That was such a cool touch. Yeah.
Right?
We've got, I love how our lovable protagonist is clearly a deadbeat buffoon, followed by, hey man, it's not your fault that you're a bitch.
I don't remember what that was about, but I was correct.
We've got loincloth man. We've got,
That's when he
We
got
got that.
jumped behind the house.
there were a lot of really wicked deaths in this movie. Noah's notes say that hospital death was wicked. The one where he's like arching his back and
Oh,
his like
yeah.
collarbone pops and then he dies.
Yeah, and he's got all
That
that
was so
blood
good.
coming out into like the oxygen mask and stuff. Really cool.
Yeah.
That was so good. Oh my god. I want to watch Train to Busan with you guys so bad.
Right. Right.
We've got classic horror drawings. That's another thing that reminded me of Poltergeist and Insidious and Sinister and all of that is the classic creepy kid horror
But
crayon drawings.
these were objectively some of the best creepy kid drawings I think I've seen in a while.
No, I
Yeah,
can
Because they didn't
vibe with that.
they looked more like a kid did it rather than, hey, yeah, kids draw
Kids
mom
do
and
this.
dad and they're separated because there's tension and then they draw Shadow Joe in the corner. That's what kids do.
Shadow
Yeah.
Joe. It's always just Slenderman, but slightly reskinned.
Yeah.
We've
Not
got
that Slenderman,
Noah's
yeah.
notes. We've got that's a wicked rash. Good observation, Noah.
It sure
It is a wicked rash. We've got turtleneck ass shaman. Yeah, the turtleneck was a look.
It was a look.
Yeah.
Um,
The combination of the turtleneck and ponytail made him look like somebody that I knew in real life, and I was not happy about that.
this is just a general like observation about the world, I think Noah has said here. I love how when the sun sets, you can see it move. You can really see it move as it gets low.
Oh yeah,
That's-
this was a real world observation where like you can
Well,
really
it's
watch
the-
the sunset.
Nothing to do with the movie, but when the things get close to the horizon that are in the sky, you can notice their movement a lot more.
The sunset in the movie, and I'm like, it is fun to watch the sun just like go and be gone, like over the course of just a little bit of time. Once it's at the horizon, suddenly it's gone.
Good
It is
observation, Noah.
interesting, yeah.
We've got we've got the real killer here is all these hills that people be falling down.
People fall down a lot of hills in this movie.
They do.
happens a
There's at least
lot.
3 that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of waffling about who the bad guy is, but I'm gonna go ahead and skip over that.
I waffled a lot.
He waffled a lot.
That happens.
I'm sorry, I'm going to read this one. It says, I'm really glad that I was right and the Japanese man is a good guy.
I mean, he was just possessed.
He was at one
In theory.
time.
And then we have literally, you skip a line and then the next thing is, and I was very wrong and the Japanese man is a bad guy. I love how rough he looks.
Yeah, it's like we have, I'm glad I was right, and then, she's trying to spin this and make it seem like he is the bad guy, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
But I'm a smart
okay, so he's a
one.
villain.
I'm a smart boy. I'm perceptive. I can figure out what's happening in this movie.
That's the mood.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically it. The rest is just commenting on how trippy the ending is. And it is. It's
And
very wild.
Brief thing on the filmmaking front, I really liked their use of actual natural light in this a lot.
Oh yeah.
When it
They
was
do that.
dark, it was hard to see. When it was light, it was easy to see. I'm not always a huge fan of when people do that, but in this movie, it ended up playing out pretty well. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
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 I could probably
Is this
talk
the-
about this movie for a long time, but I will not.
Mood.
Now, do we tease the next episode before or after socials?
Before.
I think it
normally.
depends.
I'm pretty sure it's
We've
Before?
been doing it before lately.
Oh.
Let me bend your ear with this crazy new movie we're going to be watching next week.
My
Then
ear is bending.
That you guys should already know about because you did vote on it. Yeah, you, the audience,
no, they
were
didn't.
involved
They
in this
fucking
pick.
tied
Right.
on it.
We're
Yeah,
covered.
you
Yeah, they
guys
tied
did
with
vote
Saw.
on it.
tie, and then we picked.
Bet
Yeah.
you're excited to watch Saw. No,
Fuck
I'll
you.
pick Saw as one of my picks someday.
Yeah,
but
we'll get to it
this
soon.
time, next episode, we're gonna be watching Creep. I love Creep. It is a found footage movie. So be aware of some motion sickness warnings going into that one.
Oh no.
Other actual trigger warnings to be aware of are Stalker.
Ooh.
I think that Stalker stuff is really important for this movie because that is kind of the crux of the plot as it goes on. Also, I can't remember if it's this one or the second one where we get full frontal male nudity,
Oh.
Ooh.
but I'm pretty sure it's both.
All right.
So
nice.
I'm pretty sure there is a dong in this.
There's a
Fair
dong.
warning.
It's funny
Thank you for
when
the dong warning.
when I said ooh or whatever I did after you said full
Mhm.
frontal male nudity on my Audacity like the spikes and everything, it made it look like a dong.
Heyo. That's very good
It's very
Good to know
topical.
Audacity is here for
for the full frontal male
Dong.
nudity
For the penis.
Yep.
for the penis. Anyway,
But yeah, I don't know. It is viscerally uncomfortable at times, due to the interactions between the main character whose name I don't remember and
Creep?
the antagonist whose name I don't remember.
Is he the creep?
But-
Which one is the creep?
Oh,
you'll have to
find
watch
out.
and find out.
Oh.
But you'll know within like 2 minutes.
It's a Fight Club scenario, and it's the same dude,
Yep.
and he's
Damn.
the creep.
You nailed it.
Thanks,
All
Jeff.
right, I knew
Wow,
it.
Jeff spoiled the movie. Anyway,
If you're gonna spoil movies for us here, where else can we see you spoil
Yeah.
movies?
I spoil every movie I see on Twitter at Bubba Wubba Dab, BUBBAWUBBADAB. And I don't tend to spoil movies very much on Instagram at The Hammer of Jeff, but you can follow me there anyway.
They're
You're
just,
too busy lifting heavy things to spoil movies.
That's
just
true.
a lot of thirst traps on that Instagram.
Yeah, it's all just butts and
It's thirst traps exclusively for powerlifters.
Yeah.
it
Because he doesn't do
exists.
enough shirtless stuff to be real thirst trappy, but everyone else is just like the form.
A thirst trap for
Um,
powerlifters would just be like
incredible.
videos of me drinking ungodly volumes of chocolate milk, probably. That's hilarious. for
There you go.
powerlifter
powerlifters, but-
mukbang. Anyway, you can find me at Nina Wolverina on Twitter and Twitch and Instagram, but not on Tumblr. There it's Nina Wolverina with the 3 in it because I'm a big dumb dummy and locked myself out of my own username.
I miss
yeah,
when
you
It's
can
the
follow-
funniest thing.
I miss when you used to say Nina Wolverthrina.
Yeah, it flows
Yeah, it is
well.
I
Nina
like Nina
Wolverina.
Wolverina.
But I don't, I want to, it's not, the E is not in the Ina part though, and I don't want to be confusing. The 3 is in where the E is.
Oh, it's
in the
three arena.
Wolf
that doesn't-
3 Wolf
doesn't
3
work.
arena. Yeah, no, it doesn't. So that's why I stopped saying it that way. But I can start saying it that way again now that I've explained the ins and outs. But yeah, and then I also post about horror stuff sometimes at House Usher Rises. I have not tweeted there since I watched the really terrible animated
House Usher.
House Usher. So it's
Ironically
fitting.
enough, you killed yourself with that one.
I did.
I can't believe you killed your account with bad
With bad Poe adaptations.
Bad Poe adaptations. I, on the other hand, over at Bubba the Bad, BUBBADABAD, I don't watch bad Poe adaptations, and I can promise you that if I do, I'm going to tweet about it, but I won't make it a whole thing. It
Whoa.
won't kill my Twitter account.
No, it's not going to kill his
Way
Twitter
to brag.
account.
You're
Can you believe it?
you're so rude to me.
I also only have the one Twitter account.
Divorce.
Nothing to
It would be
spare.
rough if I killed that one.
No extras.
And you can find me, Emma, on Twitter at Emma Panada and on Twitch at Emma Panada. I've started streaming a little bit because I'm going to start streaming TTRPG games on my Twitch in July. So in about a month, we're going to start that. And I want to reach affiliate before then. So I'm just doing a lot of nothing streams to try to hit that because I have enough followers. I just need like the hours and the average viewers and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
I'm doing that, and Nina's gonna be in one of the games there. So
What?
Yeah, I am. I'm
Whoa.
gonna be in a game of it's Kids on Bikes, right?
Kids on Bikes, and she's super upset about it. She wanted to
I'm-
be in Curse of Strahd, but I said
would have
no.
probably just played Shaw in Strahd anyway, so it's probably good that you're forcing me to create a new character.
Yeah.
Is Kids
yeah.
on Bikes like a Stephen King themed thing?
It's like a Stranger Things sort of deal.
Oh, okay. Which is very
Well, Stranger
Stephen
Things
King
is a Stephen King
influence.
based thing,
Okay,
so
cool.
Yeah.
It's
But-
exactly what it
yeah,
sounds like.
no, it's gonna be fun. I'm
It's-
gonna have to pick which archetype I want to do. It's probably gonna be the not like other girls girl because that is
Love
a
it.
very Stephen King thing.
I've got a lot of really cool ideas for this game. I refuse to describe it much of what I'm planning because it would give things away.
Fair.
But it's
So
going to be a
excited.
very silly, fun game, and it's going to be a really good time.
I'm super hype.
Yeah,
So yeah, definitely get involved with that.
yeah. Go follow me. But
Cool.
thank you all so much for listening. We look forward to hearing what you thought about The Wailing. And we'll see you next time.
Whoop whoop.